Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is John, and I'm going to be doing a demo of another mech related painting, but this time we're going to try to put it in a different context with a little bit of narrative, but most importantly changing the style of how I'm going to be doing this type of painting. So let's get started. Alright, so before I actually get to some sketching, I want to just show you guys a couple of I guess mood boards or references that I gathered up together, and these are by Henry Scott, Jean-Paul Laurens. I have another one by one of the Orientalists. I absolutely love this style of painting, and basically what I'm trying to achieve or go for is I kind of want the same kind of language setting, but instead of having a guy, I want to see if I can put a mech into this type of environment. So what I want to do is I just want to kind of study the colors and understand the palette, and then we're going to start sketching away. I have another one here, and I just love kind of the scale and kind of the richness in color here. So we're going to try to adopt some of these, basically some of these types of styles, and then get started on our painting. So with that said, let's start with the sketch. So starting off with something just really simple here. I kind of wanted this idea of this mech. You know, something, this type of like design or something of like a mech kind of sitting in one of those Middle Eastern type of like lighting scenarios or environments. So just kind of sketching away at the general forms. And I'm just going to add in the figures. I'm thinking it might be kind of cool to add a figure or two to kind of just give it relative scale. So it doesn't feel like, you know, it's just about just a mech. It's always nice to have like a character for scale. Thinking something right here maybe. And notice how loose I'm actually painting or drawing in this phase, because I just want to make sure that the idea is somewhat cool before kind of getting really ahead of myself. And if the idea is cool and worth going for, then I'll definitely take it to the finalized painting stage. And I'm getting a lot of influence from the mech design, you know, looking at like designs from like Metal Gear Solid. Another one of my favorites, Industrial Mechanica, which is done by a designer named Izumo Juki, and that's spelled with the I-Z-U-M-O. Juki is J-Y-U-K-I. Sorry about that. But he is a phenomenal designer who has just an incredible sensibility for just kind of industrial looking aesthetics, and like I love his whole approach on like just doing kind of like mechanical designs. Just really feels, it has kind of a sense of realism to his work. Okay, so I'm basically kind of sketching in, but kind of doing a quick lighting study, just using again simple black and white values. And the reason why I'm working this way is that, you know, I'm quickly able to kind of stage the type of scene that I want by just doing by just kind of adding in a little bit of value here. think it might be cool to add just a little bit of an archway right back here of some sort, just to kind of pop out that silhouette. I typically don't always work in this fashion where I'm thinking about lighting. I generally always kind of sketch in my basic shapes and then I worry about kind of the lighting afterwards. But in this case, I wanted to try this method where we're just kind of establishing the overall shapes and lighting scenario in a more graphic way. And the goal here is I definitely want to kind of keep it still in the realm of this nice painterly style as much as I can. Even thinking about kind of the folds on this character here. And what I love about, you know, kind of the Orientalist type of paintings is that everything just had like this really raw looking lighting scenario. It was always about kind of this like overly brightly lit environment, and it just had like a lot of exposed lighting, and just the scenery felt real. You know, you can kind of get the sense that like there's a certain amount of heat and people and population and just things that are constantly, you know, happening in that type of environment. Okay, so this is starting to look like it's going in the right place. Definitely like the general direction that this is going in. Probably expand the canvas just a tad bit so it's not completely covered up on one side. Okay, so from here, let's just go ahead and add a little bit of a base color. So I always like to keep these in mind, because something that's nice about these images is that I love mainly the color. Not only the subject matter, but I love kind of the color influence that we can actually get. And I'm actually using these paintings to kind of just basically reference and use the colors here. Obviously not the image itself, but just the color combinations, and I'm gonna obliterate any detail that I see, and I just want to see if I can get this locked in by using it on overlay or putting it on multiply. And sometimes linear burn works really well, but look at the amount of colors there. It's actually working very, very well. And like there's a lot of like variations here that I probably wouldn't have been able to paint if I were to do that, you know, with the knowledge that I have, you know. So it's always nice to kind of see what types of colors that you can kind of get just by putting in a traditional piece like this. Now some of you guys might be thinking like, well, is that plagiarism? I mean, in terms of color, you know, no one really owns color. Is it highly referenced from an artist? Yes. Would I credit them? Yes. You know, but you'll soon find out that, you know, it's going to change and evolve. But what this will do, it will allow you to kind of think and see, you know, how this can inspire the image, you know, rather than just kind of feeling that it's being completely being copied. So what I'm gonna do here is I definitely want kind of this sense of light, this color. So I'm gonna color pick that, and I'm just gonna put it onto this layer here. I'm going to go ahead and actually start painting in on this layer just some colors that I think might work. And note that, you know, this is all on the linear burn. So anything that we want back, I'm just going to color pick around it and just reintroduce it back into my original piece here. And all I want to do is I want to create, just to give it a little bit of light on our mech. And even our character here, you know, maybe this character's in a red robe, or maybe it's in a different color robe. Maybe we can try something that's a little bit more desaturated, so it's different. So we kind of get the instant relationship between these two. You know, color relationships actually really help kind of identify the object and the background, because, you know, sometimes if you want the object to be related, you either want it to be complementary or you want it to be very similar. So in this sense, you know, we want to kind of complement the background by choosing something that's different, but it's still kind of harmonious. Okay, cool. So I like where this is going at. This is starting to feel somewhat decent in terms of the colors and stuff that we're establishing here. I'm probably going to go ahead and add just a little bit more light. And notice how I'm just trying out the palettes here. I'm definitely not trying to, you know, say that it's gonna have to stick with one thing, but I always like to kind of mess around and see what works. Just adding just a little bit of cool lighting here. Give it a nice rich color. Even in the shadows here, we can get nice dark shadows here. Start to get some nice color variation, and also start to think about kind of my shadow area here. I'm going to add in another new layer. I'm just going to go ahead and start painting, and I'm going to start focusing on actually the mech. The mech itself is my primary subject, so the mech and the character are kind of the two main things. So I'm going to go ahead and start just painting and thinking about this design. And I'm going to use now the colors in the background to basically paint my image. And at this point, it's kind of like we've already established the color palette and the general lighting scenario. Now all we have to do is really refine the image itself. And just color pick some of these areas just to help kind of lift the values and also help refine the edges here. That's all I want to do. And I'm only thinking about the shape. And when I say details, it's like it's still thinking about the details, but in the form of a shape as much as I can. Thinking, just gonna size that sphere down. I'm also thinking like it might be a cool little like camera type of object here. Go ahead and use the lasso tool, and I like using the lasso tool to basically crop out or get a specific shape. And this usually helps when we need to define a really clear shape here. And I'm always going to try to switch up my brush because I want to make sure that I have variations of textures and brush strokes just to keep the painting alive. You know, I don't want to keep using the same tool for everything. And also, like, it forces you to kind of think about your image because you're constantly changing your tools. There's a saying by Craig Mullins where he says, you know, it's really easy to get into the habit of what's called licking. And licking is like just kind of, you know, where you have music playing in the background and you're just kind of monotonous, like just mindlessly just, you know, painting jibber jabber, you know, and you don't even know what you're illustrating or painting. It's like you're just kind of letting your brain kind of do whatever it wants. And I never really thought that would actually happen, but I've caught myself doing that a couple times, where I'm literally just kind of mindlessly just painting an image, and I'm not even thinking about, like, you know, what it is I'm painting. I'm just kind of going with the flow. So keep that in mind. This term is called licking. Sounds weird, I know, but it's apparently it is an actual habit that, you know, people do fall into. And I am definitely guilty of doing that before. Alright, so as I'm like refining the legs, I'm just indicating just a little bit of reflective light, because again, this is getting pretty dark in this area, and I just want to showcase just a little bit of that reflective light so we can get some nice forms. Go ahead and paint in some extra things. I'm just gonna slightly edit out a little bit of that light there. It was a little distracting, so and there's this archway here. then I'm going to just refine the edges. That's kind of the extent of what I'm going to do. I mean, architecturally, I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, motifs and things that I should keep in mind when I'm illustrating these types of scenes, but I'm just going to kind of do a more generic version of the architecture in here. And I'm starting to really like kind of the feel here. Let's go ahead and just, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and kind of break up this edge. And what I mean by breaking it up, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a lost edge here, because I feel like this is getting a little too sharp and it's kind of pulling our eye away from the actual mech design here. There we go. I'm just going to go ahead and paint in some of the additional side details I'm thinking about here. Again, this is a design that's heavily inspired by Industrial Mechanica. I mean, or Industrial Divinity, sorry, not Mechanica. But I absolutely love kind of the industrial look that the designer portrays, and it's just, you know what it is? It's actually just the simplicity of how he actually kind of showcases, you know, a very complex design. It's like simple forms. It's like the boxes and stuff that really help give it that iconic look. And here on this side, I know that it's probably really red, and you might be wondering, like, well, you know, would you ever want to show a little bit of cool lighting? I think so. I think here we can definitely give it a little bit of a cooler side. So I'm gonna just use my gray. I'm gonna color pick this area. I'm gonna use a gray, and I'm just gonna kind of glaze in just a little bit of a cooler value to kind of show that this side is turning away from us, but it's also kind of getting reflective light from the sky. So that kind of justifies why that section is getting a little bit more blue. I always kind of look back at some of the architecture here, just to see if there's anything else. And there's a lot of nice, like, little details and stuff that's cool. So maybe we can indicate some of that stuff. But keep in mind, you know, all these little details, these little accents that I'm adding, which Sid Mead likes to call this scumbling. These little scumbling marks that I'm doing is more or less just kind of an indication of kind of like the sculpting that's happening. And it's just that indication that I just really want. Okay. Let's see what else. What else can we add? I'm always looking at some of this stuff too. This is just like really awesome, man. Like some of these textures and things that they really just indicate. I mean, they were really just putting a lot of time into this stuff, you know? And it shows. It just shows how much they're really thinking about all of the details. I'm probably just going to just do a very loose indication of that. Adding some like window treatment here. Back onto our MECH. I always use the lasso tool, especially on hard surface designs like this. It's always nice to give it just a clean, really clean finish. And notice how sharp that comes out, especially on the outer edges here. Adding just a little bit of detail towards the torso of this thing. Maybe some like piston or rotating hydraulics. I guess that's always a tricky thing, is like, you know, you have to basically design and paint at the same time, and I always find it fun but super frustrating to do. So if you guys need to go ahead and, you know, take a moment to do just a little bit of a quick side study to really figure out all your details. And again, I'm just using some textural brushes, and the reason why I want some texture there is I basically want to kind of break up that surface with just a little bit of texture. Just to give it just a little bit of interest in the surfacing. It's either that or you want to go super detailed, but again, this type of design is relatively simple if I'm going to stay true to the industrial divinities kind of aesthetic. So I always find it a challenge because, you know, you're trying to do something that's like super modern and really I guess like a hard surface design, but trying to keep it painterly. You know, so that's gonna be the challenge today, is how do we achieve a modern look, or, you know, put a modern design or look, but still achieve that like really painterly style. And notice how I'm actually one thing to keep in mind as well is I'm not trying to refine all the elements. I'm only taking certain elements of the design and really spelling it out. So for example, you know, I definitely want to spell out, you know, this front of this mech, and everything else is going to kind of be a little bit looser. And in the areas that are looser, you can clearly see a very, very soft edge or undefined edge. And that's what all this is right here, what I'm doing. And that's going to give it kind of that strange but believable sense of, you know, what's in focus versus what's not in focus. And even the shadow here, notice how this line is really strong. You know, I'm going to actually kind of break this up so that it's not a harsh shadow. Kind of want it to be more diffused in terms of the forms. There you have it. That works pretty well. I think something else that's missing here for this type of image is really the sense of just architecture. And that just can be in like the simple architectural you know, details here. And I'm actually working with a very, very low opacity brush here, just so I can still kind of retain some of those nice colors. And you kind of get this nice, like, really opaque illusion by doing that as well. Just adding that, see if we would actually get a shadow there, but you know what? I kind of like having that edge there, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep that as is. Gonna add just another little element here. Maybe just the feet, so we can see the bottom portion of the feet here. And you know, all of this, this side of the leg, I'm probably not going to even worry too much about, you know, detailing it up, because again, I want to be selective, and that's kind of the way to, that's kind of going to be my way of keeping it painterly. Otherwise, you know, it starts to get incredibly busy and really overly done. So we're just going to pick certain areas and let everything kind of just naturally fall off. Create another new layer. This time we're going to focus on this character. And this guy's probably, you know, I don't know if he's like the owner, or but he's definitely someone that's approaching this thing. I definitely want the light to be brighter on the top. That way we're getting a lot more focus to the figure, and most importantly to the design of this mech. I kind of like the way that the feet here drop off, you know, ambiguously, because we're starting to get a lot of natural edges, which is what makes a lot of the classical paintings really nice. Is kind of this like lost and found, and that's kind of what that means. This whole like lost and found kind of deal, and it actually makes your paintings or your images look really believable. I'm gonna go ahead and add maybe a secondary figure of some sort. Maybe this guy's just to kind of get a glimpse of how to approach this. If you're gonna add something, you know, it's always good to start off with a sketch. You know, just like what we did initially here. Maybe this guy's kind of looking up, and maybe we see a little bit of his face, but he's definitely looking up, and you know, basically maybe consulting him like, oh hey, what should we do? Maybe he is actually fixing something here. Modern day, or it's like if these guys were scientists. I mean, back in like this kind of period, these guys would basically be in the white lab coats, but they're in garments. And it's awesome. I don't know if we want to add maybe we can add like rugs and some other things to kind of give it a little bit more interest here. Maybe even add like another, like a door frame or an opening here. Okay, so this will be my sketch notes. So what I'll do is basically underneath, gonna put this on, let's put on normal, but underneath I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of block in, you know, what I'm thinking for the general color. So I'm gonna just kind of color pick, and again, I don't want to go 100% because I do still want some of that color in the background to really pop through. So that's kind of the beauty of having, you know, really rich colors to start with, because you can have the option to basically use the colors underneath to kind of help influence some of the materials and local color. And I'm thinking for like the rug and stuff, maybe let's just kind of refer back to some of our images here. Maybe this kind of yellow color mixed in with some of these nice deeper tones. Even some of this turquoise blue is killer, man. Maybe we'll use that for like the pots and stuff. And the reason why I'm having this on a separate layer, so that at any time, if I feel like this stuff is getting a little too noisy, or if it's like unnecessary, then I can just quickly erase it out. You know, just take out what I don't need, keep what I want. And I'm gonna keep this layer on here just for a little bit, just so that we can make certain quick indications of some of these pots and things like that. I'm gonna maybe give this a slight bit of a different color, just to give just a little bit of a texture here. Add in a little bit more stuff in the background. And we talked about adding a door here. Maybe I can just kind of put in an opening of some sort, and maybe this might help punch out some of the details on our mech. And again, notice how loose I'm just kind of indicating, you know, my painting, but still keeping the drawing on top, because I still want, you know, to just see if this works. If it doesn't work, you know, it's all good. We can always take it away, and that's kind of always my fallback, right? It's like we're generally okay with what we had underneath, you know, and if we need to, we can always pull it back as needed. kind of see that it definitely helps kind of populate that scene a little bit. Notice how this pot didn't help, so that's something I can erase away. I definitely think that this is a little distracting, so I'll pull that out. If I'm going to add anything here, maybe it can be something else, but maybe a wider pot of some sort, catching a bit of highlight on the inside and then just a little bit on the edge. And we got the character here. It's obviously kind of our maintenance guy. And maybe just to kind of give it a slight variation, maybe this guy's wearing a slightly different color uniform. And we're going to really pop out this character by darkening that background, because everything is always relative. That's the only reason why I'm popping that out. Now notice how I'm not actually I'm specifically not brightening this character's shoulder. It's because I still want a sense of light being the brightest at the top and it slowly fading downwards. So that's what this is here. And in that arm. Probably add just a little bit of a indication of a finger. And I haven't really gone into the zoomed into the painting yet, because I still want everything to work and read as an image that's far away. So I'm just adding a little bit of detail on that backside. Add in just a little bit of edge detail and a little bit of shadow detail here. Make sure we save. ahead and just kind of punch in and darken some of this stuff a bit more. You'll quickly see how like vibrant it gets as soon as you add, you know, more contrast. And already that's really adding a lot of contrast right there. So I'm just gonna add just a little bit. And hope that we can kind of use that to kind of fade kind of back it off a little bit. But notice how much it punches our image, or punches kind of the focal point right here. It really gets this area to really pop a lot more. And that instantly right here becomes such a strong read because of the amount of contrast right there. Probably gonna add just a little bit of reflective light. Oh, not that much. And you know, I'm debating whether I should keep this red. I do like that it's a red value, because it doesn't get too I guess contrast in terms of the amount of you know, warm versus cool that I'm introducing, so the temperature stays relatively, you know, in the same family. Since this is the other leg, for a second I forgot about it. I was like, oh shoot, I still have another leg here. You know, I want to make sure that we can really define this area, at least define the edge a little bit. Going to add maybe just another arm, just indicating that, you know, that this guy's fixing or repairing it or something. Just gonna add a little edge here because I just want to show just a little bit of a cleaner and crisper edge on that side of the mech leg, so it's not too it's not too fuzzy. Add in this shape here, which is basically the shadow that's coming in from this character. Go ahead and add just an indication of the other leg back here. And what's great about this is that a lot of the light that's actually catching here on the ground, we're probably going to get a lot of nice bounce light. So I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of see if I can fake in just a little bit of this like really orangey value, kind of using this amount of orange just to kind of fake in some bounce light. It's a little stylized, but you know, whatever to kind of give it a little bit more richness to the image. And see if that helps it, because that amount of bounce light, notice how it is causing a lot of attention here. As when I tone it down, our eye just kind of tends to glaze over. So it's definitely you know, there's pros and cons to, you know, certain lighting bits. Maybe we can use it here. Alright. Now the next thing that I'm probably gonna do is actually start working on the ground a little bit. And the ground, you know, you might think it's relatively simple. You're like, oh well, it's just, you know, it's just a ground. But you know, basically what I see in some of these paintings is there's a lot of complexity and color variation in the ground too. You know, there's a lot of warms and cools and just slight hue shifts here. So I definitely want to see if I can get that same feeling. And you know, from time to time I'll actually color pick from traditional paintings like this just to help influence some of my colors, just like what we did in the beginning, and just to kind of see what that can add. And already it's adding a lot of nice variation of color. I'm gonna go ahead and just add just a little bit of a brighter tone as well. Could even go as bright as using white too. and whatever we don't need, we can just kind of take away. Go ahead and color pick. See how that works for us. It's getting a little overworked here, and you can tell because there's a lot of marks and brush strokes here. So I'm just gonna kind of dial some of this back by basically erasing away at it and only have it in certain areas. And you know, I'm also thinking like maybe this side probably is getting just a little bit of light, probably not that much. Maybe a sliver. And a lot of top light. Slight toplet surface as well. Alright, we're getting pretty close to the end of our demo here. This is relatively a quicker painting that I wanted to show you guys. Just demonstrating, you know, kind of this sketch technique or this painting technique. But you can see how quickly we can get a lot of nice, you know, nice colors in our painting. So this is a painting that I would definitely want to sit down for several hours, even days, maybe just refining. Just adding just a little bit more detail back here, just tools and stuff like that. Just to give us a little bit of punch of color, what if we added just that nice pop of yellow? Obviously it's really dramatic, but I definitely think it needs just a little bit of some color there, something. back. Okay. Alright, so another thing I want to try to see if we can improve the image is mainly the just some of the textural qualities here. So I'm gonna bring up these paintings and just want to use a section of the painting here, maybe even a section of the ground, and actually just use it as a texture. And I'm gonna put this on an overlay, or even like a soft light mode, just to help give it a little bit of a lift, you know. There's a lot of nice color and stuff like that. And even here, I want to put this on soft light, and I'm just going to use this as a way to kind of bring a little bit more variation. And I just want to do it in areas that I feel like that need it. So don't go off and just do it on your entire painting, because then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. But you know, you want to just do it in areas that will help just give it just a little bit of a nice rich value and rich color. And this is something that, you know, I've even seen other artists do, where they'll use the entire painting and put that on an overlay or soft light, and this instantly gives you such nice color. And it's just about the color, not about the image, because obviously I don't want a painting of a boy here. But if you're to just imagine, let's just take this color palette, I'm just gonna duplicate it. But if you're just imagine you know, if this is just a color swatch, and I've seen this done before, just to kind of harmonize the image here, because everything is relatively nice. There's a lot of nice areas that are working and some areas that are a little bit off color, but by using a color swatch and putting it on overlay or putting it on a soft light really helps to kind of pull it together. And that's basically what I want to try out. Maybe even like a multiply helps too. This is interesting. Let's see if we can get some nice value here. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Oh, sorry about that. My dogs. So basically, I'm just kind of giving this a little bit of a slight texture, and you can tell that, you know, all it's really doing, it's helping with color, but also texture as well. And you can do this with anything. You can do this with a photograph that you took, you know, your own paintings, anything. And this is all it's doing is just giving it a little bit of life here in some of these darker shadowy areas. And we can even do that here too. Save that out. Kind of double check and see if I like where everything is going. I'm just gonna see if there's anything else that I want to try out. to try this out here. And I'm just going to add in just a slight color, like a white wall indication here. Just to give this a little bit of a white trim. And notice how I actually created a mask in order to paint out what I don't need and just paint in only what I need. Go in there and start refining some of these little areas. And I'm just gonna go ahead and see if I can just kind of refine just a little bit of the edges here. Again, this is just meant to be a concept sketch. You know, something that I would provide to my clients or even the studios. They're looking for an idea. You know, I would just give them a sketch like this. You know, to get an approval on the kind of the mood and the color before really finalizing the painting. Give it more of a yellow cover seems better. All right. Okay, so there's probably a couple little bits that I'm gonna just add. And I know I probably said this. It's like, yeah, I thought you were already done, but just add little tiny bits of highlight. Just give it a little bit more pop. Just giving this a stronger shadow here. get a better sense of what is in shadow. And I know we probably don't really see this character, but it's always nice to even just try to indicate just maybe even kind of the nose and the eye area. Just a little bit of that really helps. Definitely goes a long way. Okay, let's see, just a couple last minute things like double checking all of this mechanical detail stuff. I always find it really fun to do these types of paintings because, you know, thematically it feels like I'm doing something sci-fi, but it also feels like I'm doing something like traditional, you know, like classical type painting. But it's like whatever I can do to fool the brain. And this is definitely my way of fooling myself that I'm doing a more traditional-esque looking subject matter, but a little bit of a twist. Alright, cool, man. Well, I'm gonna call this one done for the sketch for the 25,000th time. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.